everybody. So today I am going to try out for you guys vegan pork belly. Now if you guys haven't seen my vegan meat hauls, this pork belly is still available at Meiwa. I will put the 10% discount code below, but yeah, I had gotten this in the mail a couple of weeks ago and I wanted to do a couple of different recipes with it, like a couple of different preparations, just so that I can give you guys a very well-rounded all-inclusive review. So I have the pork belly actually right here, and I think I've gotten a close-up of this before, but basically it looks like this, and if you guys can see, it's spongy, it's weird, it's different, and I will talk to you guys about that texturally. So I'm going to try a piece of this pork belly, uncooked or anything, by itself first, so that's what I'm going to do, and then two other preparations. So what I have here is actually a Taiwanese specialty. It's called Bluefin, braised pork belly in kind of a mixture of these sweet spices. It could be cloves, star anise, 5-spice, and then there's some soy sauce and some sugar, and it all gets braised and cooked together in this liquid. So there's this preparation, and then I thought that it would be interesting to do a baked preparation as well. So while this is kind of cooked in a wetter substance, I have these, which are these pork belly buns, and I will also be doing a recipe actually on both of these two, so they will be coming up. So this is baked. So what I ended up doing was I sprinkled salt and sugar over the pork belly, and then a little bit of oil, just because I realized that the texture was a little bit different. And then I baked it at 375 for about 12 minutes before I put on the rest of the sauce and everything else. So I thought that it would be cool to try that preparation, a baked, a braised, and then this one just all by itself. So yeah, so first let me talk about the product itself. So when I picked this up, and it was frozen before I defrosted it, I would say that the the texture is quite spongy if you look up close. The feel of it is a mixture between you can tell that it does have a fair amount of water content on the inside, so it's moisturized, it's kind of wet, slightly greasy. So in terms of the texture, you guys can actually see that it's quite spongy. When you feel it on the surface, it's kind of a mix between water and just maybe a little bit of oil. So you can definitely tell that it's spongy, because when you squeeze it, there is a fair amount of water content in it, and yet it's just a little bit slick. So there's that combination. So what I would liken it to is kind of like a big hunk of deli meat. So if you guys have ever had that before, deli meat, it's kind of sometimes it's not entirely meat. If you look at salami and stuff, it's just a bunch of stuff ground together and then it's kind of packed together. So this has that kind of a feel and kind of a weight too, because you can tell that it's spongy. It has the same weight, it has the same density as kind of meat like that. In terms of smell, so okay, so this kind of has a slightly it's a sweet, doughy, but also a slightly plasticky smell in the background. And when I look at the ingredients, actually this one's a good one, because there's not too many crazy ingredients in there. Water, wheat, soybean protein, there's oil, tapioca flour, konjac flour, salt, sugar, yeast, white pepper, star anise, and clove. So there's nothing weird in there that would smell plasticky, and yet it goes away after you cook it and whatnot. So I don't want you guys to get turned off by it too soon, but that's kind of how it smells like to me. Yeah, so basically what I've described. So my first thing actually was to try this meat by itself. First, let's try this part. I definitely think if you heat it up, I'm literally taking it out of the refrigerator and trying it right now. The flavor is actually pretty good. If you guys have ever had the the red sausages from dim sum or Chinatown or whatnot, it has kind of that sweet, more sweet, but sweet, salty kind of rice winey flavor. Kind of like tassu actually, whatever they kind of marinate with that. So I get that kind of a sense. I actually want to say that the red part has a different consistency than the white part. The red part tastes a little bit more meaty. Everything is like a little bit more dense and drier. It is more meaty. It tastes like meat. And then the white part is a little bit weird. It's almost like pork belly is supposed to be. So the white part is like a little bit more gelatinous. I think it's like a little harder. It's a little bit more like boing, gelatinous that way. And then the red part is like, you can, as you chew, you kind of taste like the fiber. So it's a little bit more meaty that way. But in general, the flavor is more on the sweet side, kind of like tasyu. So yeah, so there's that. Let's actually go on and try the real food, because I think it's weird to just be eating it like that. Alright, so I'm going to try the braised pork, and it's traditionally served with rice, and usually you have this like really nice braising liquid that you can pour over the rice so that everything gets like nice and saucy and whatnot. So I'm going to try that first. That's actually pretty good. I will say that the meat seems to have gotten slightly softer after I braised it. So whereas this in dry form kind of has like the meat fibers in it, I would say after braising it, this gets a lot softer, almost like a meat loafy type consistency. And then the white part, which is like totally different, still has that springy kind of gelatinous consistency. So I think that they did a good job here in making the two different in texture, and because pork belly does have that naturally, because obviously you have the fat, which is a little bit more gelatinous, and then you have the meat. So it really, I think, depends on how you like your pork belly. Like I know with a lot of Asian recipes, or just with a lot of Asians, like they like eating the whole pork belly, so like they like having kind of the gelatinous and more chewy fat bits, as well as like the more meaty and the fibrous bits. So you know, in most of the stuff that we braise, we include both bits in there, whereas I know sometimes like with Western recipes, sometimes, you know, people might tear away the fatty bits first, even though, you know, you should definitely always cook them together because it'll help with the moisture. So yeah, so that's kind of what happened in the braising. I think the fatty bit was still gelatinous, but the meaty bit was definitely softer. And then in terms of the flavor, I think it picks up, or like this kind of like a meat substitute really soaks in flavor really well. I think it's because it basically is a sponge. It looks like a sponge. So any flavor that you put into it, it definitely absorbs it really well. Just the things that you have to note is like, it's good to try out, I really think, like any vegan meats before you cook with it, like without anything at all, because sometimes they have this neutral base flavor that I would say most of the time has a tendency to be on the sweeter side. So if you can know where your baseline is, then you can adjust your recipe from there, you know. Then so now let's try this pork belly bun, which I'm super excited about. I actually made the bun as well, and it turned out like so fluffy and so well, and it's really like a general bun recipe that you can do for sweet and savory preparations. So for this one, again, salt, sugar, and then I baked it for a little bit. This is actually really good. I mean, the buns are super soft, and I think I like it because I mixed it with like some pickled onions and also some cucumber and cilantro as well, so it's like a really nice mix. It's hard to like give you guys a proper review of it because there's so many other things involved. So let me just, I'm just gonna yank out a piece of meat, and then I'm gonna just eat it that way. Let me just try this one again. Okay, so this soaks up flavor just super well again. So what I didn't end up showing in the video was that after you kind of marinate it in the salt and the sugar, definitely wash the meat off first, because it can get really salty. But in terms of this texture, I actually like it better because it's a lot more meaty because it is drier. It's not as, like this was softer like meatloaf. This was, I think it has like a salami consistency. Let me just go back to the original. It's so weird. This is a lot more spongy. This is softer. And then this is actually like a little bit drier and a little bit harder, like at least the meat part. The fat bit, which is so weird to eat. It's also a little bit drier, but it still has that kind of like bouncy, gelatinous consistency as fat does. So I would say definitely that my most favorite preparation is going to be baking it, just because I think that there's a lot of moisture in that already. This just makes it a little bit more meaty. That being said, like the braised rice is actually really not bad as well. It's just a softer type consistency, so it really depends on what you like. And so really, like, there you guys go. This is basically the review. If you guys have any additional questions, I'm trying to think of what else you would ask. Definitely ask me down below before you purchase it, or if you want to know a little bit more. Again, the thing with this particular thing is it's really cool because it looks like meat. It's definitely super cool for preparation, and anytime you have, you know, a pork belly recipe, it's nice because there is that kind of like the fat layer, which actually kind of tastes like the fat layer of pork belly, only, I mean, obviously it doesn't melt as well because it's not actually fat. But it definitely, it soaks up a lot of flavor. So when you're preparing different recipes, just keep that in mind, and try to like taste it before you bake it, because sometimes you might want to just wash off a little bit more of the marinade than you would have, or maybe make the marinade a little bit less concentrated than you would for normal meat, because, you know, as you can see, there's a ton of holes here. Most of the flavor is going to penetrate right through. And then really just as normal with meat, like if you braise it, it's going to be a lot, not a lot, but just softer like meatloaf. And then if you bake it, it's going to just be a little bit harder. It's a little bit more, I'd say like meaty and barbecue-y, and you know, you get the little meat fibers and whatnot. And then, you know, I guess if you want to have it as is, which you are not going to, but this is definitely a lot more spongy than I thought. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this review, and remember, if you have any questions, definitely you know, send me a comment down below, or I have an Instagram and I have a Twitter as well. I don't think I tell you guys enough, but you know, feel free to message me on those platforms, or you know, I usually post whatever recipes I'm working on, you know, before I actually make a video of them, so it's kind of like a cool preview of like, oh, what is she making, or what is to come. So definitely check me out on those, and yeah, so I will see you guys again next time. Bye!